Hi guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make a blackberry pie filling. This is really exciting for me today because we really mixed it up and did something really a lot more creative and more exciting. So today I'm going to be using this Castello di Amorosa wine bottled exclusively for ZLINE. It's a Cabernet Sauvignon. It is delicious. I personally really enjoy it with some pasta, but that's just me. And today I thought, you know what? Why not throw it in this blackberry pie? So what I did to figure out what I wanted to do with this wine is I definitely took this little cork and smelled it and thought, oh, okay, what spices might work with this? And I really encourage you to do this with almost anything you cook. You know, if you're cooking meat, barbecuing, I've seen other chefs do this a lot. So I grabbed some allspice and sniffed it along with the wine. I thought, oh wow, that works really well. I also tried cloves and it did not smell good together. So it doesn't smell good together, it's probably not gonna taste good together. The other thing I thought would be good is grating a little bit of nutmeg into this. Now ground nutmeg really loses a lot of its flavor, whereas fresh grated nutmeg, so much more of a punch, and you have to use a lot less, which is really great. So I just took my microplane, took this little hard nutmeg, and just grated a little bit just like that. And when you smell it all together with that wine, I mean, delicious. So what I did is I took a little bit of juice from the blackberries, probably about less than a quarter of a cup altogether. And then I did 3/4 a cup of this beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon and about an 1/8 of a teaspoon of allspice and about 1/4 of a teaspoon of grated nutmeg all together, as well as 1/2 cup of sugar and just a little bit of cornstarch, about 2 tablespoons worth. We're gonna take this and we're gonna cook it on the stove. One thing about the fruit gel method with pies is you can use anything you want. Sometimes I read a pie recipe and it says, add water. It's like, why? Add anything flavorful. You can use juice, you can use wine, you can use liqueurs. I mean, the world is at your disposal, but don't use water. If anything, use the juice from your fruit. So I defrosted these blackberries to get a little bit of that juice out of there, and then I added the wine to that. We're gonna take this over to the stove, cook it on about a simmer, and then only have it on the stove for about a couple minutes after that, just until it thickens up slightly and we get that starch flavor cooked out. You can also add, if you'd like to, vanilla extract to this. We're really winging it and playing it by ear and having some fun today. But these ratios of about 3/4 to a cup of liquid, 1/3 to 1/2 cup of sugar, that's really gonna give you a pretty good basis. These blackberries are pretty tart, which is why I went with a little bit more sugar, but in general, I find a lot of pies to be overly sweet, and I like to taste the fruit. So I recommend starting out with a little bit less sugar and kind of working your way up. It's always better to err on the side of a little less sugar, I think, especially these days, and especially with dessert. So I'm gonna get this on the stove. It smells so divine, and I can't wait for you guys to make something like this at home. One of my favorite pies, just don't tell anyone, I like to do in the summer, fresh peaches, a little thyme, and Chardonnay. Oh my gosh, changing your life. I'm gonna bring this over to the stove and get this going for you. Don't want to cook the starch too long or it will start to degrade. But we're just gonna get that, oh yeah, that's really nice. That's what we're looking for in terms of texture and thickness. I'm gonna take this off the heat and get it into a container to cool to room temp. Ooh, beautiful. Look at that texture. We really are cooking out all of the alcohol, or basically almost all of it, besides some microscopic amounts. But what you are getting from this wine is all those beautiful flavors that they put into it through the winemaking process. All those minerals. Oh, yum. All right, we're gonna let this cool to room temp and then we're gonna be able to use it in our pie. All right, guys, so our bottom dough has had time to relax in the fridge for a bit. I did take it out of the fridge just for a few minutes so I can manipulate it when I'm ready to. If it's a little too stiff, you won't be able to do some nice edging on there. So I've got my flaky pie dough ready to go. I'm just gonna flour my counter really quick again. Get my dough, get my rolling pin. I'm gonna roll this out before I actually put the filling inside the other dough. And I'm just doing that because I want to make sure my filling doesn't have time to moisten that dough. Boop. All right. Again, I like to stand up on my tippy toes. I'm pretty tall, but it just helps me get that little extra pressure in there. And as usual, my dough likes to be a square, so I go back to those corners and I just roll them a little bit, focus on them, get them a little more round. Anytime I feel my dough sticking, I just move it. Focus on the thicker areas, usually the edges. You can always re-flour your counter if you're feeling like your dough's sticking. This can be really difficult if your kitchen is pretty hot. So in the summer, this can get kind of tough. You can always pop your dough back in the fridge if you're feeling like it's getting a little too warm and your butter is melting. Okay. Again, we're going to want a lot of overhang for this guy. So we want to make sure we can do some nice edging. All right, it's looking beautiful. So I'm just gonna let him hang out for a second. I've got my defrosted blackberries ready to go. And I've got that fruit gel that we made earlier. I am just gonna combine these guys. I'll let that fruit gel cool to room temp, just so we don't start cooking anything too early. Just gonna mix these up, make sure the fruit gel is evenly coated in there. That's going to keep our berry pie from being really soupy and goopy and kind of gross. Okay. So, oh my goodness gracious. This smells so good. Just going to scoop all that beautiful juice in there. This is why I didn't want to put in those berries too early. The other thing I like to do, little pro tip, ooh, he's getting a little sloshy. That's okay. Rustic pies are fine. The other pro tip I like to do is just dot my pies with some butter. That little bit of finished fat is going to just really feel amazing in the mouth. Maybe one little more. So I'm going to take him back over here and I'm going to roll up my dough really carefully on my rolling pin. If you find you're getting blackberry juice all over, that's okay. It happens. All right. And I like to kind of even out the filling a little bit, just really carefully. Got a nice overhang. So what I'm going to do now, take my kitchen shears, I'm just going to trim off this excess dough about to that edge of that pie pan. I'm going to save all this extra dough for decorating, or like I said, you can make little cinnamon twists. You can do all sorts of stuff with extra pie dough. I definitely recommend checking out some amazing pie artists on Instagram, social media. There's some really cool stuff going on in the world of pies right now. And there's a lot of stuff you can replicate at home. It's pretty easy. So this overhang, I'm gonna take this guy and fold and tuck under. And the reason I'm doing this is I don't want my edges to expand too much. Fold and tuck. I think of dough like fabric a lot because you do want to treat it a bit like fabric. It does like to move. It's soft. You don't want it to rip or tear. The other thing about pies is if your pie doesn't look perfect, who cares? It's still going to taste really good. Don't get too much of a perfectionist, especially on your first go around. So now that I've done that tuck and fold over, now I can do some edging. A really, really simple rustic edge. I like to take my knuckle because my fingers aren't very big. So I take my knuckle and then my thumb and my forefinger. Just go and I do nice little edges. Oh, lovely. This pie is looking so good. I'm so excited to eat this one. So right now, because I've been working this dough, I put the filling in, it's kind of been sitting out at room temp, my oven's on, right? It's not super great time to put it in the oven. You absolutely can, no problem, but your dough kind of might move and do funky things. I want to show you how to prevent that. So the best way to do that is to relax your dough at this point. You can pop it in the fridge for a few hours. Usually in the industry, we do it up to 8 hours. You can also pop it in the freezer, and that's gonna help that butter set up and that gluten kind of have some chance to relax and chill out a little bit there. So what I'm gonna do is pop this in the freezer because I wanna be able to bake and enjoy it today. So I'm just gonna put it in the freezer for a couple hours, come back to it, finish doing some vents and decorations, and then get it right in the oven.